Hello everyone and welcome to my 9.1.5 Guardian Druid Mage Tower Guide. To begin with, we're just going to go through some gear. I did not do any kind of chromie time walking anything for this. I chose instead to do Emerald Nightmare on all 3 difficulties and then did a run of Tomb of Sargeras just for kicks. I ended up getting just a few pieces out of there that I ended up using, most notable being the Umbral Moonglaves from Tomb of Sargeras. I was lucky enough to get this to drop with a gem socket, and obviously gemmed that with versatility. Versatility is going to be probably your number one stat as a Guardian Druid for the Cruel and Varus encounter. Other than that, I just went for anything that I could stick an enchant on or a gem slot on, such as the Living Belt Buckle in my belt. I purchased pretty much all of this gear off the auction house. Just be careful that you're buying actual druid gear, not monk gear, because I bought a couple pieces and then had to resell them. Other than that, I just popped just primary stats from Shadowlands on my chest and one of the Shadowlands back enchants on there for the extra leech, and decided to go with Pride As because it was just a neck I already had with a socket with Mark of the Trained Soldier on it. My weapon wasn't anything special, it was just Lightless Force, and that was pretty much all I focused on for gear. Talents were standard. Brambles, Wild Charge, Balance Affinity, Heart of the Wild, Galactic Guardian, Survival of the Fittest, and Rend and Tear. Balance Affinity with Heart of the Wild is going to be key, especially for the beginning of this encounter, where you want to get the most DPS on Varus that you can. So let's jump into it. The biggest thing for me at the beginning of this encounter was getting myself into position to drop my Umbral Moonglaves. I chose a few different consumables, obviously just a Flask of Power, Veiled Augment Rune, Bear Tartar for food, which gives you a speed boost every time you kill an enemy, and then War Scroll of Battle Shout and War Scroll of Fortitude. Opening up this encounter, obviously you begin with Varus here. He summons Tormenting Eyes that channel on you and then knock you back if you're not facing them when they finish the channel. I made 2 macros for this encounter. One of them was a focus interrupt macro, and then the other one was a quick shift into bear form, then into an interrupt macro, just so I didn't have to worry about trying to click multiple keybinds at once. When the Nether Horrors spawn, you want to collect them as quickly as you can. I did so with either a Thrash as they walked near me or a Moonfire from Galactic Guardian. You want to interrupt them with Disorienting Roar as soon as they complete their cast and begin their channel, but before the first tick of damage goes out. This eliminates them recasting their ability and you having to scramble for multiple mass interrupts when we only really have one, which is Disorienting Roar. In Phase 1, the Nether Horrors seem to collect pretty easily. You hit one and they all come toward you. This makes it deceptively easy, as opposed to Phase 2, where they spawn and then they all seem to go for Valen. I'm not really sure why that is, but it's definitely something you need to watch out for and that you don't become complacent. That was probably the most difficult part of Phase 2 for me, was collecting all of the Nether Horrors before they got onto Valen and stood still to cast. Other than that, you want to keep dots up on Varus all through Phase 1. I found the faster that he went down, the easier time I had, because the Nether Infernals keep spawning during this first phase and then persist into the second phase. I was aiming to go into Phase 2 with no adds up and only 2 Infernals. This was going to make my life a little easier. It seems as though the time is reset between phases 1 and 2, so if you kill off all Nether Horrors before you spawn Cruel, his landing resets them and you get a little bit extra time there to get some DPS on him. Other than that, you want to keep trying to circle Varus, avoiding as best you can the slams. As a Guardian Druid, you do get kind of one get out of jail free card in your Wild Charge. If you get knocked back and pop Wild Charge immediately, you'll do this really weird clipping thing and kind of teleport back to the boss. When Cruel spawned, I chose to stay in Balance Affinity just for this initial kind of pre-Annihilate phase, and then I was taking one Annihilate, and then I was planning on interrupting the next. You absolutely want to interrupt Twisting or Twisted Reflection. If this goes off, it is 100% a wipe. You cannot defeat this encounter. There is, as far as I know, no possible way, since it heals the boss and then puts a dot on him, which makes your attacks heal him as well. You want to try and keep all of your interrupt/healing orbs from Valen up for this phase, just to make sure that you can delay Annihilate as best as possible. In prior attempts, I hadn't been able to even take the third stack of Annihilate. It does increasing amounts of damage. I think it's 110% each time. So one stack 110%, two stacks 220%, so on and so forth. But in this this particular attempt, I managed to hold on to all of my cooldowns and was able to survive a third Annihilate there. The cutters that come through just act as pushbacks, which are kind of irritating, and in previous attempts I had gotten stuck on them and then thrown around by the Infernals, and it was just not a good time. I performed pretty terribly in Phase 2 consistently, but somehow figured out that jumping them does work, and that constantly walking Cruel backwards in a circle, which I didn't do very consistently in this attempt, but in an ideal world that would be preferable. Hopefully this has given you guys a little bit of help, especially if you're a little bit confused on some of the interrupt mechanics and everything, and dealing with the Nether Horrors, and I'll post the links to the macros in the description. If you have questions, leave them in the comments, and thank you so much for watching.